So in this video we're going to be doing an H36 swap on my Seiko SKX007. I purchased this watch secondhand. The case was in good shape, the crystal was beat up, the movement was completely done. It needed to be serviced. I couldn't justify servicing this movement, so instead I invested this money into some parts and decided to do a swap. So an H36 gives you hacking function as well as manual winding. I started by disassembling the watch, took the movement out of the case, put it away, and then I'm cleaning the bezel by hand. I didn't want to submerge it into my cleaning solution. You could really ruin your bezel. So while other parts, the case, back case, bracelet, are being washed, I'm working on the bezel. So now that the bezel is clean, you can see me taking the hands off. You can see me taking the hands off the movement. The dial is really nice. It had no marks whatsoever. I don't think the watch has ever been serviced or opened or anything like that. I'm just removing the day wheel as well as the driving star, just putting it away. And now I'm working on the stem. So fitting a stem is a tricky business. I've never done it before. So here are some things that I've learned along the way. You gotta measure many times before you get it absolutely right. I have measured the original stem with my tool, and then making sure that the aftermarket stem as well as the crown at the end would be the same length. So getting it to that length took a little bit of time. So initially I used my handheld pin vise, but I wasn't really happy with it. So in a little bit you'll see me switch to a stationary vise instead. I just found that it gave me a little bit of more control versus my handheld vise. And instead of using files, I ended up using sandpaper on a foam pad. The sandpaper was grit 180. So I was able to precisely cut it and then smooth the edges. And eventually I got the length right. Whenever you do a new crown and stem, or you're cutting it or replacing the crown, it's always critical to use a little bit of thread lacquer. So when everything's said and done, I did use a little bit of Loctite. This blue stuff you see in the top left corner, just a little dab, but it needs time to cure. So once I finished assembling everything, I just put it down, so it's going to cure for about a day or so, just to make sure it's not going anywhere. Here you can see me taking out the parts from my dryer. And now we're working on the actual swap. So I purchased 2 crystals from Crystal Time USA. One was a flat top with clear AR, and the second one was flat top with a bevel, just like the original crystal, but that one had blue AR. So deciding between the two, I chose the flat top without the bevel and clear AR. Now you can see me doing some final hand cleaning of the case. Unfortunately, the ultrasonic and the pre-cleaning didn't get everything that I wanted. So I'm using my pegwood as well as my nail teas and a little bit of IPA just to get all the debris out of there the best that I can. So obviously this movie has been sped up, but in total from start to finish, between disassembly, cleaning, setting up the video and whatnot, it took me maybe about 4 hours from start to finish. Okay, so now we're trying to fit the crystal. I decided to use my screw down press instead of my cheapo from AliExpress. The reason for that, when I use my screw down press, it applies pressure evenly across the crystal and it moves it in a uniform motion down instead of being lopsided if I used my cheapo press from AliExpress. So first I put the gasket between the case and the crystal, and then I slowly use the press to press on the crystal. You have to be really careful not to damage the crystal, because if you're not, sometimes it goes lopsided and sometimes it cracks. I used a little bit of a plastic covering, and then I did rotate quarter turn every little bit to ensure that the crystal was seated properly. So here you could see me trying to play around with the gasket that goes on the inside of the bezel. I've tried many different gaskets today. For some reason it wasn't working for me, so I thought it was the wrong size. So you'll see me try a few different gaskets. I ended up going back to the first one, as it gave me the best original smooth bezel action of the SKX. I did use a little bit of silicone grease before I installed it. I did not use anything to pressure test the case. So technically, I don't know if the watch will be 100% waterproof to 200 meters. The only way to do it is to get a pressure tester and then do that. Here you can see me cleaning the little metal spring that goes in between the case and the bezel. That's what's going to give you a unidirectional action of the bezel. And that's what I was talking about. Wasn't happy with how the bezel was behaving. So here I am trying to fit a couple of different gaskets to see which one gives me the best and smoothest action, closest to the original. And like I said before, I did end up going back to the gaskets that I got from, I think it was Vintage Seiko Forever or something like that. So here I am trying to clean the inside of the crystal, make sure that there's no dust, debris, or anything. And here we are trying to get the dial and everything onto NH36. As you can see, I'm using my finger cuts now because it's almost a finished project and I really don't want to mess up that really nice dial. Had to try a bunch of different movement holders just to make sure that the movement wasn't going anywhere while I pressed the hands down. Pressing the hands is a little bit tricky. It's not hard. You just need to be patient. I first inserted the stem, moved it into the second position, and advanced everything forward just past midnight. And I did see the date change over, so that was my cue to install the hour hand. So I installed the hour hand at midnight, then fast forwarded again past midnight, just as the date rolled over, and then I installed the minute hand in the same fashion, so at midnight. The seconds hand was a little bit tricky, just because they had to fit super precisely, but same approach was taken. Here you can see me using a piece of Rodico to balance and support the hand. And then after that is all said and done, You want to make sure that the hands are not touching each other. So I looked from the sides, top, and then I pleased with the hands, moved them forward just to make sure nothing was touching. A bit of a side note, right out of the box, the NH36 was giving me pretty good numbers on my time grapher. I was getting readings at about 265, 270 at lift angle of 52 degrees. It was a little bit slow at about 14 seconds, and the beat error was about 0.8. So I'm going to let it run for about a day, and then we're going to start playing, adjusting it so it runs a little bit more precise. So here are some final touches. Here you could see me casing the movement. The first time I had to take it out because it was just off by a hair, and it was really bothering me. Again, I used a little bit of air to get the debris from the dial as well as from underneath the glass. Fitting the new stem. But before I do that, here's a little bit of thread lacquer. Not much, very, very little. Screwing on the crown and then installing the whole thing into the watch. New gasket is coming. This is a back case gasket with a little bit of grease. Here we are. So the watch is finished. Now you can see me cleaning up a little bit. Overall, like I said, it took me about 4 hours from start to finish. That's between disassembly, washing, drying, cleaning, messing with the hands, gaskets, the works, pressing new crystals, everything. If you haven't done this sort of thing before, just make sure that you have a step-by-step process. You write it down, because sometimes you forget things. But other than that, it was a pretty cool project. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.